This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, everybody? Ricky Widmer here, along with not the one and only Brandon Swanson. I'm joined by Sean Anderson. How you doing, Sean?
Why can't it be the one and only Sean Anderson?
Fine, the one and only Sean
Well, now
Anderson.
it's forced. This sucks.
Technically, we're all the one and only. Well, unless your name's like John Smith.
I'm definitely not the one and only Sean Anderson.
You are
There's
not the
definitely
one and only
other
Sean
Andersons. I bet there's other Brandon Swanson.
There are other Ricky Widmers. I know that.
There was actually, I think there's an author. I think his name is Brandon Sanderson, and I was like, it's me and Brandon put together. Yeah.
Brandon Sanderson.
Brandon Sanderson.
But we are here Sean has been so gracious to take Brandon's spot while he's deserted me and gone to the beautiful state of Florida. Well, actually, not the beautiful state, as
It's beautiful looking.
I hear there's a storm running through
Still beautiful.
Florida right now. It's still a beautiful state, let's be honest. More beautiful than it is here half the time. But we are continuing.
Like corn.
Kind of.
If you like corn.
If you like corn, we're the spot for you. But if you haven't been joining us, we are continuing our college football previews. And today we're continuing the Pac-12. We're going to finish the Pac-12 today. We did the South last week. We're doing the North this week. And if you're new to how we're doing these, we start with the bottom feeder from last year. So in this case, it'll be the Oregon Ducks. And then we go all the way to the division champion. We'll end this podcast with the Washington Huskies. And Sean, that's one of the reasons why we brought you in, you being the Husky resident of MVP, because the rest of us aren't fans of the Washington Huskies.
I don't know if I'm a resident. I don't think that's the right word.
I didn't know if Washington or Notre Dame was more of your baby, because you and Brandon are more in the same boat. You have that Notre Dame fandom, but you do have that other team,
Notre Dame,
that you cheer for.
Notre Dame's the number one. They just haven't been good in a while. Well, not a while, but last year was not a good year.
No, they haven't been good.
But this is an independent preview.
Yeah, and it's not. And the thing that brings in here is Oregon. They used to be good. They weren't too good last year, coming off a 4-8 season, and it was a 4-8 season that prompted some coaching changes for the Oregon Ducks. You bring in Willie Taggart. He's now the head coach of this team. They are now bringing in defensive coordinator Jim Leavitt. He's switching the defense back to what it's going to be with a 3-man front, and that's where I kind of wanted to start with the Oregon Ducks, was not necessarily will they do better this year, because I'll be honest, this is one of the teams that is kind of an enigma to me, where I don't know if it's going to be another 4-win season. I don't know if it's going to be a 5-win season. I don't know if it's going to be an 8-win season with Oregon, only because this is an Oregon team that, because of Willie Taggart coming in, this is going to be an Oregon team that we have not seen for some time, because we're so used to the Chip Kelly era and the Chip Kelly hierarchy in Eugene.
Yeah, I mean, you're still even seeing, at least last year, you even still saw some Chip Kelly remnants with Helfrich still at the helm there. But looking at Taggart, I mean, like you said, I don't know, you don't really know what to expect here out of the Oregon Ducks. But one thing I could tell you not to expect, when you look at Taggart's history, his first year is usually a 2-10 season. Back in 2010, when he took over with the Western Kentucky program, 2-10 to start them off. And so South Florida, they started off at 2-10. I don't think this Oregon team is going to take a step back with Taggart coming over. I think they're going to take a step forward, because this was a very young team last year. You look at their freshman quarterback, Herbert. He was very young, thrown into the starting job right away, and he's got a lot of tools to become a great player. And you have obviously the running back, I'm blanking on his name right now,
Royce Freeman.
Royce Freeman. I mean, he's a guy that's a little more tenured, a little more seasoned, and he's going to be a guy that can really, be a guy that people look to, because not only does he have the experience of being in Oregon, he also could be a leader on offense. So I think Taggart's experience, he obviously proved that he was a good coach. Moving from Western Kentucky to South Florida to now Oregon, I think that Taggart's ability to be a great coach, and also paired with just Oregon has a lot of talent, and he's a good recruiter in his own right, Taggart. So I think this Oregon team, you're going to see a step up. If anything, you're going to see a 5-win team, 6-win team, 7-win team. I think you're definitely going to see an improvement from this team.
Well, and that's the first thing I noticed when it came to just when you looked at Taggart and where he has been, because even back when he was the head coach of Western Kentucky, 2-10 to start, and then boom, 2 7-5 seasons. Like you said, South Florida, 2 wins, 4 wins, then the 8 and 10 wins. And I'm glad you brought up the recruiting, because the thing that you sent me a preview before we started from Sports Chat 503 on YouTube, and he even mentioned he's an actual Oregon fan, and he even mentioned that the recruiting is going to be a lot different with this coaching staff just because of the energy and everything that Willie Taggart and his staff are going to bring to recruiting. Like Royce Freeman's one of them, where he could have left and went to the NFL, but he decided to come back for a senior year just because he wanted to play for Willie Taggart.
Yeah, and one thing too, I mean, you also got to take in the fact of where Taggart comes from. He comes from the Harbaugh line. I mean, he's coming from
running back coach with Stanford.
Yeah, he's coming from a very strong lineage. He's obviously proven that he's gone away from that Harbaugh line and has been able to thrive in his own right. So looking at the hiring of Taggart, I think this is a great hire for Oregon. And like I said, you're not going to see a vast improvement. You're not going to see a team that's going to be winning the Pac-12, but you're definitely going to see an improvement from this team, because not only is Taggart, I think, an improvement, because you needed a change in Oregon with Chip Kelly leaving and Helfrich kind of keeping the same regime over there. You needed a culture change. You needed someone to spark life into this program, and I think Taggart's the right guy to do it. So I think it's a definite upgrade when it comes to coaching, and I think that the people that he's brought along to this team, I think that they're definitely going to be able to at least rise up a little bit, because you do see this Oregon team, and this Oregon offense was good last year. I think they were around top 30 last year, and you look at Taggart and what he brought to South Florida. He brought this Gulf Coast offense, and this was his team was able to put up over 40 points per game. So you're still going to have that high-flying offense. You're still going to have that quick, fast-paced offense. I don't think that's going to change too much, but I think at least the locker room culture is going to change. I think it's a big thing for Oregon and Oregon fans as well.
Well, and for me, the focal point of the offense, it starts with Justin Herbert, and the reason why is I think back to
every team you start with your
usually
quarterback.
it starts with the quarterback, but I think in this case it's more so because when you thought of Oregon last year, we had the lineage, like even with Chip Kelly in the Helfrich days, we had the lineage of quarterbacks that they had. You had Marcus Mariota. Then the year after, I'm blanking on his name, but he's the transfer from Eastern Washington that came in for a year. Then last year it was supposed to be Dakota Perkup, who was the next guy to kind of create that lineage down the line. And last year, Perkup, it didn't happen. And that's where you had Justin Herbert kind of take over that starting role as a true freshman. I think with guys like Royce Freeman being the senior and then having Herbert.
Vernon Adams.
That's it. I knew it was something with a V.
He said he was better than like the top guys in the draft. He thought he was going to go number one. He didn't go. He went undrafted.
No, and that was one that he was a step down from Mariota, and then Perkup was completely just didn't pan out like Oregon fans wanted it to. That's why I think it starts with Justin Herbert. I mean, coming in, and last year, like I said, the true freshman being kind of thrown into the fire, like you said. Still had a good season. Only turned the ball over 4 times.
Yeah, that's huge.
And if you can limit like when we talk about quarterbacks, when we talk about running backs, it's if you can limit turnovers, you'll have chances to win games. And I look at last year's schedule, and only 2 wins in the conference for Oregon. They beat Arizona State, and then they went ahead and they beat Utah. Both of those are still on the schedule, and both of those are still winnable games, even though the Arizona State game is now at Arizona State this year. But I look at the schedule. Nebraska's a team that lost their quarterback from last year. That could be a winnable game. Southern Utah should be an easy win, let's be honest. If you lose that one, then you're in real trouble moving forward. But take Nebraska, take Southern Utah, take the 2 from last year, you're already at 4. And then there are other games like Oregon State, I think you can flip this year. Arizona might not be as good as they were a year ago. And then even Cal, they're another team losing a quarterback that left for the NFL draft last year.
Well, and one thing, too, you look at the offensive line. this is a very seasoned offensive line as well. So you look at Herbert, his ability to limit turnovers, that's also going to be helped by a very decent offensive line.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at seniors on this line of the right guard, also senior Crosby as well at the left tackle, and then you look at the left guard, center, and right tackle positions. All of those guys are redshirt sophomores. So these are guys that have been there before, have been in situations last year where they were able to have in-game snaps. And I think you look at this team, they are just improving. So that 4-8 season, or the 4-8 record last year, I think that had to do a lot with the lack of culture there in Oregon, and I think players not buying into that culture anymore, and then the fact that this team was just very young. So again, like I said, I think this new regime in Taggart and Levitt, two guys from South Florida, I think that this is going to be a huge boost to the Oregon Ducks.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the one thing also that even the preview that you sent me from Sports Chat 503, he mentioned it where when it was the Chip Kelly kind of Oregon teams, all you focused on with Oregon was offense. How many points are they going to put up? Because that's all you worried about. Yeah, you knew they were going to outscore the opponent, and you didn't really worry about the defense too much. It was just, we're going to score more points than you, and that's all we have to worry about. However, bringing in, like we mentioned, Jim Levitt, now going back to that three-man front, and even moving a guy like sophomore Troy Dye from the edge to a weak side linebacker spot, I think this could be the year where when we talk about the Oregon Ducks, we're not just talking about, wow, they're a high-flying offense, or even, what uniforms are they going to wear this week? We're going to talk about, wow, did you see that defense? Their defense was actually better, and we're actually going to focus on the defense a little bit more than we had in past years.
Yeah, and I think that Levitt is definitely going to bring more of that focus as well, because you look at what he was able to do not only in South Florida and be able to go into the NFL and help out the 49ers and be a part of a very great 49ers team when Harbaugh was at the helm, and be the linebackers coach there, and he was coaching fantastic linebackers there, especially Patrick Willis right there.
Two guys now that have been under Jim Harbaugh and Taggart and Levitt.
Yeah, and then he went over to Colorado, and now just obviously hired with Oregon. He's been a guy that played safety at Missouri in college. He's a guy that has the defensive mindset. He's a guy that I think is very seasoned, and with Taggart being so young, being 40, never being in a Power 5, at least Levitt's going to bring that that experience there, being a guy that has been at Kansas State, has been in South Florida, has been at Colorado, has been in Oregon, has been in the NFL. I think that's very smart. It's a guy that he can lean on if he does have trouble. And Levitt, in his own right, I mean, is a great coach. I think that we're going to see a little bit of step up in the defense. I don't think it's going to be anything where the defense is going to take over and Oregon's become a defensive powerhouse. But still, I think it's going to be something where you don't overlook the defense, like you were saying.
No, and exactly. And I mean, going back to the schedule, because I'm kind of looking at it right now.
Yeah.
There's one chunk of the schedule to where I don't want to say I'm scared, but I want to say that there's one chunk, and it's a big chunk, where I'm like, this could be a rough spot. And it's starting on the October 7th when you start against Washington State, and then when you end November 4th at Washington. That chunk of games, Washington State, Stanford on the road, UCLA on the road. They have Josh Rosen, who's looking to have a better season. I know Utah, you beat them last year.
But Utah was a good team last year.
They're a good team coming into this year as well. They're keeping their quarterback in Troy Williams, and they still have their system set by Whittingham. And then you have Washington, who college football playoff contender, just like they were a year ago.
Like a top two team in the Pac-12 for sure.
Most people are expecting three teams to challenge for the Pac-12, and that's Washington in this division with the two California teams on the other side.
Well, I do like the fact that they do have Washington later in the season, so the fact that Herbert can get more snaps, this team can get a little more season, they can get the culture established with Taggart there, and you have obviously Washington at Washington, which is not in your favor there. But if you're looking at this team, again, this is the focal point, your focal point of your team is this offense. And if you can pressure Jake Browning and you can at least rush him and hurry him, that's when he's least successful. That's why Alabama absolutely stomped Washington in the playoffs. If you're able to do that and then effectively move the ball on offense, that's going to be a good pairing to possibly upset Washington. So, again, it's a rough stretch there, but at least you do have the break at UCLA. I think that this Oregon team is better than this UCLA team. Utah, we'll see where they are, but I think that's going to be a tough game, like you said. Obviously, Stanford's going to be a rough game, and Washington State's going to be a rough game, but at least you have that break in the middle of there where you can at least take, I'm not take a game off, but you can at least take a break. It's not as big as Washington State, Stanford, Utah, and Washington would be.
Well, and the thing I also, because of that stretch, I do look at the schedule, and I know that many people are like, well, hey, you know what? We might be around 4 wins again. We might be at 5 at best. I can look at this schedule and maybe see 6 wins. Like, I could see a 6-win season in this schedule.
I could see them starting 3-0. I could see them beating Southern Utah. I could see them beating Nebraska, and I could see them beating Wyoming.
Interesting you said that, because Wyoming was the team I was going to ask you about, because they
got Rosen.
They've got Josh Allen. Different Josh. It's the same Josh.
I know they're Josh. I always mess them up.
That's the team I was going to ask you about, because it's on the road. Josh Allen is a guy who is in that discussion with the plethora of quarterbacks that we're going to have, hopefully, this year in the draft. I was going to say I could see them going 4-1 to start the season, with that loss maybe being Wyoming or Nebraska.
See, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I mean, the last time they did face, I know it was in 2014, this was completely different teams. Obviously, Allen wasn't there for Wyoming, and this was a completely different Oregon team, but Oregon completely stomped them 48-14. And I just think one thing where, obviously Allen's a great quarterback, but how much disparagement is there between the weapons he has on offense and then that defense, and how much can that defense of Wyoming actually stop Oregon? And that's something where I think it's going to be the biggest test for this Oregon team is going to go into Wyoming, which is weird saying because this is Oregon. This has been a powerhouse for years in college football, and they're afraid of going to Wyoming. Like this is just something that doesn't really make sense. But again, like you mentioned, this defense, this is where Leavitt needs to show his experience. He needs to be able to game plan against a guy like Allen, and I think that he will be able to do that effectively. And as long as he's able to slow down the pace of Allen and slow down their game completely, I think that Oregon can win this game because, again, this is a high-paced offense, and if they're able to put up points consecutively and, in let's say a 6-minute span, put up 14 points and hold Wyoming to nothing, that's going to take away the confidence from Allen, and that might put him on the ropes. And again, with college football quarterbacks, you don't know how seasoned they are, you don't know how strong they are mentally. They usually develop that strong mentality in the NFL. I don't know how much he will be able to bounce back and say, all right, let's get this going. If they're able to get out to a quick lead, I definitely see Oregon being able to win this game. And I could see them starting off 4-0, but then it's once you hit that California, that Washington State, that Stanford game, that's where you might see a dip in 4-3, because I could see this team being ranked early on in the season, maybe jumping into the top 25 and staying there for a couple weeks. But it's really, if you lose 3 games in a row, will people be like, all right, you just had an early schedule to start the season?
I think best case scenario, well, obviously the best case scenario is above 6 wins, but I think the best that Oregon will do this year is a 6-win season. 4-1 in their first 5. Lose every single game from Washington State to Washington.
I could see them beating UCLA.
Beat Arizona, beat Oregon State. UCLA is going to be interesting because of Rosen coming back from injury and everything with the Jim Mora team that we have. But the thing that Wyoming does, and I'm glad you brought up UCLA, Wyoming actually helps there because let's say you lose that game. It doesn't matter. Leavitt could tell that defense and kind of be like, okay, that's what it's like going up against
a top caliber
NFL caliber quarterback. We're going to see 2 more, maybe 3 more in Washington State, UCLA, and Washington.
Yeah, I think that's one thing where you at least, and I think the best part about their schedule is the last one's going to be Jake Browning. And while, I love Jake Browning, I think he's a fantastic quarterback, I would say that, possibly Luke Falk, Allen, and Rosen have higher NFL stocks compared to Browning just because of Browning's size. But looking at it, you can say that I like the way that they're scheduled because, they might be facing the weaker of those 4 quarterbacks at the last part, but people in their mind have Washington as a better team than all of them. So, I mean, Browning's a fantastic college quarterback. I don't know how his stock's going to be compared to the NFL, but still, looking at all that, I like the way their schedule's lined up because then they have, the weakest, if you want to say weakest, it might be Luke Falk, but it might be the weakest matchup quarterback-wise.
At the beginning.
At the end. No, at the end with Browning.
Oh, okay.
So like they have, hard, and then you're going into Washington, taking on a tough Browning. But you could say, hey, we've done this 3 times before. This is the worst of the 3. If we can stop him, we can beat this Washington team.
Plus, I mean, you could also, the one film I would think of from last year that you would want to watch maybe to get kind of an idea. USC. They were the one that were able. Because you're not going to be like Alabama.
Well, yeah.
Like, no one's like Alabama.
At Washington, highly ranked Washington team, you go in and they just completely stomped them. And it was something where no one really thought that was going to happen. And I know this isn't a USC preview, this isn't the Washington preview yet, but this is something where, obviously USC was able to put it together once the quarterback change was made, but still it was something where, USC had the everything come together at once. They bought into the system. They had the right quarterback. The coach finally got it pushing in the right place, and they had all the confidence in the world, got a couple stops, got points on the board, and then just completely kind of tore down that Washington team.
Well, and this is where we're going to turn it on to them. You guys let us know what you guys think down below, because this is a team that, of course, you might be at the same spot, but this is a team with Willie Taggart that you guys are set up for the future, because we've seen improvement in each one of his seasons at the other schools that he's been at. So let us know down below what you guys think about the Oregon Ducks heading into 2017. But Sean, let's move on into Cal.
I'm gonna say 5 to 7 wins.
5 to 7. That's what you're going with. Sean says 5 to 7.
5 to 7 wins.